Welcome, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Caterina Fortuna, and I'm here to open the introductory webinar. I'm basically the housekeeper. So welcome, and thanks for joining us to this introductory webinar on the short course, which is going to happen March next year in Venice. It's a short course on science, policy, society, interaction in ecosystem-based marine resources management and planning. Here you can see the plan for today. First of all, 3 key points. This is not a Zoom meeting, is actually a webinar, which means that basically attendees don't have the ability to show their faces or talk at this point. Please put your name and surname in the right screen if you didn't do yet, but it looks like most of you did. So thanks for that. You can add, if you want, also the name of your organizations. This could be useful for later when you will be able to ask questions using the Q&A chat that you can find on the top bar, or in the final part of this meeting at the end of the morning, when we will open for a session slightly more interactive, and you will be able to comment. And by raising your hands, you will tell us that you want to make a comment, and we will give you the mic. So these are the basic rules for today's. And here you can find the program. My computer is slightly slow, so I don't see when you can actually see it. So the program for today, okay, here it is. Program for today is the following. You have 3 introductory lectures with 4 speakers. Then there will be a break with some videos. And then there will be another lecture with 2 speakers, and the final session, which is going to be a little bit more interactive. And with this, if everything is clear, I will basically give the floor to my colleague, Dr. Peter Meckelworth, sorry, of the Marine Institute Croatia. And if you have any serious issues with the connections, and we can help you with some technical advice, just use the chat, please.
Good morning, all. Good morning, all. And Caterina has only known me 25 years, and Meckelworth is the surname, Caterina. After 25 years, and the fact that you're the godmother of my son, you would think by now you'd know my name, regardless. Thank you, Caterina.
It's hot in Rome, and I have to drink. Sorry, and sorry to the attendees.
Anyway, welcome all. I'm just about to share my screen for a very short presentation. You'll be pleased to know. Just bear with me 1 second whilst I sort out the technical aspects of it. There we go. I hope you can all see this. So a little bit of background on me. My name, Peter Meckelworth. I've been working in Croatia for the last 20 years, looking mainly at the conservation of large marine vertebrates, but always been interested in looking at the science policy interface, looking at how we can translate biological and social sciences into conservation measures, which has always been one of the biggest problems that we've had within conservation. So whilst I've been living and working in Croatia, I've been working quite widely with a lot of my colleagues from around the Mediterranean, particularly Andrea in Venice, Dania from Malaga, Draško and Caterina, of course, and then Chris Svetanovich from Australia, and JB from Sweden. So we previously have worked on a lot of different topics, projects, but it appeared that one topic that was quite close to all of our hearts was to develop some kind of program looking at the science policy interface, particularly with regards to marine resources. So I just take you back a little bit. This is the main slide of my lecture. I would just take you back a little bit to 1935, 85 years ago. One of the anomalies of modern ecology is the creation of two groups, which seem basically unaware of each other. One studies the human community, looks at sociology, economics, history, policy, we can add into that. And the other one studies plant and animal communities. And then these two strands of thought rarely intersect. And yet Aldo Leopold, looking at this aspect in 1935, was recognized that the fusion of these two lines of thought would constitute one of the advancing ideas of this century. Bearing this in mind, and we're 85 years later, you know, a lot of us, when we talk about mid-career, I guess a lot of us in this meeting are mid-career, that this is the focus of this workshop, are aware that actually still we have massive problems with actually translating social and biological science into policy, at least consistently. So back in the day, back in 2018, even before this in 2017, I received a random email from Chris in Australia. I thought it was spam, of course. Anything that comes from Australia, you'll automatically regard as spam, particularly in the Mediterranean. And when Chris reached out to me, he was interested in developing some ideas. His history is from this region. So over the coming months, talking to a lot of different funding organizations, one of them being IMBA, one of them being Eclipse, another one being the Marcon's cost action. We looked at developing a workshop, one attendee of which was JB, who came to Lachine in June 2018, back in the day when we could all travel without any problems. And there were 30 plus of us there, and we had an excellent, really excellent workshop. And from that, it became clear that actually, even if we're talking about early career researchers, there was still an interest in developing further workshops for mid-career researchers, which would be those with a little bit more experience. So just to let those of you who don't know, there is Lachine. It's the red mark, and even though it says Slovenia above it, it's actually in Croatia. Lachine is quite, although it's quite northern to the Mediterranean, it is quite central, looking at east to west. And you know, in conversation later with Andrea from Venice and with Dania from Malaga and other people that may or may not be in the room now, we came to the conclusion actually that there was, you know, a market, an opportunity, or even a requirement for us to develop further workshops. And hence we looked to develop a workshop. Actually, it would have been in March 2020, which was planned to happen with the support of Dania, with the support of MBC, with the support of Andrea in Venice in 2020. However, of course, due to unforeseen circumstances in the COVID situation, we had to cancel that workshop. But luckily now, with greater time and greater opportunity, we now have this opportunity to bring this workshop together again in March 2021. And I hope that many of you who are attending now will also attend that workshop. Those of you that are on the waiting list, I hope that anybody that cannot attend or who doesn't want to attend for various reasons in that period will keep us informed, and then we have plenty of people waiting to also join us for the workshop. So I would just like to reach out to everybody who was part of the process. Like I say, the Mediterranean Biodiversity Protection Community and BlueMed have basically coordinated the movements forward. I would like to reach out to Danias and Solis, Andrea Bavanti from Venice, all of these guys, and Katerina from our side, from Marine Institute, who have done an absolutely amazing job to get us this so far. We're also collaborating with Alejandro from the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. And there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes. Also, Lise, all of these guys have made a really excellent effort to get us to where we are currently. When we look at March, I hope that in March in Venice, everything will go well and we'll all be able to meet in person, if socially distanced, of course. The aim is that there will be a 4-day meeting, bringing together not only marine scientists, but also professionals that work within the community. The aim is for us to participate, put participatory mechanisms in place to engage with stakeholders, managers, and policy makers, and bring us all together to have such a kind of workshop that we had in Losheen back in 2018. One of the things that I believe from these workshops, which is extremely important, is the network that comes out of this. So it's not only the resources and the lectures and the lecturers that will be giving or trying to engage and bring knowledge to the table. Also important will be the network, the other people sitting as attendees. And this is why our selection has also been not only on merit, but also on geography. One of those things is that we're looking to set up a network of practitioners and researchers that can reach out and help develop maritime spatial planning in such a way that we have a great future for the Mediterranean. And with that, Katerina, I'm ready to hand over to the next person.
Thank you, Pete. I think Draško is coming in now.
Yes, we just wanted to make this webinar a bit more interactive, at least so that the people can see different faces and hear different voices. Thank you for your presentation, Pete. Nice to see you back in the motherland. My name is Draško Holzer. I'm the acting director of the Marine Institute, helping in organizing this. But at this point in time, I won't have any presentation. I would like to introduce you the next speaker, which is Dania Abdulmalak, who is going to hopefully start sharing her screen and starting with her presentation. Thank you, Dania. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Draško. Can you hear me and can you see my screen?
Yes, we can hear you, okay. And we can see you also.
Perfect. And the screen as well, I guess.
No, just you.
Okay. Just a second.
Yes, you are.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Very well. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the speakers as well that came before me. As everyone heard, it has been quite of a very collaborative process to reach here, despite the harsh times, I guess, that we all are passing through. So we had to postpone this training several times, but I think it was a good solution to do this introductory webinar to introduce a bit what we plan to do and hopefully be able to see everyone mid next year or early next year already in Venice. So I'm Dania Abdelmalek. I'm the director of the ETC-UMA, so that's a European Topic Center within the University of Malaga that works closely with the European Environment Agency and collaborates also in several European and international processes, among them this nice collaboration that we had in here. So I was asked to give an introductory talk about ecosystem-based management, something we work here in the center quite about. That will be part of the training course, so I will be as focused as possible, as short as possible, and I have prepared quite some rich in terms of content slides, and we will be sharing them with you in case you want to read more, and of course you can contact us for more information. Very well, so I'll start my presentation now. I would like to focus on 5 main points. Of course, thinking about what ecosystem-based management processes are or approaches are, we need to understand very well the foundation of human well-being, which is my first point in the presentation. Then I would like to talk a bit about where we are in terms of humanity. There are very important scientific assessments that have been coming out the latest 2 days ago, showing where we are, and that's important for us to have as a basis in order to get introduced to the need. Why do we need ecosystem-based management? Why do we need to recognize that we are part of the ecosystems, not above the ecosystems? And then how can we make sure that we go from concepts to practices, and we ensure a socio-ecological resilience as well. And I will introduce you finally with a short video to what we from this Mediterranean biodiversity protection community that I coordinate myself since 2016 are doing, and hopefully we see interests in becoming even a broader community with your support and participation. Very well. The first point, so biodiversity is the foundation of human well-being. We need to understand ecosystems in order to base on science, so on evidence, any advice we give to managers. No, that's this typical course on science, practices, and policy interfaces. So how can we go out of our scientific bubbles, which are very important, and communicate, coordinate, and liaise, and make sure that we make a change, right, in processes. Okay, on that point, here is a slide that's showing a bit in the heart of this butterfly where biodiversity stands. So biodiversity, it's all of us. We are part of that. It's about processes. It's about understanding the benefits that biodiversity brings to humans, in addition to the nice aspects that biodiversity can have. In many cases, it's the basis of any functional and structural traits we depend on. So this is really important. I mean, there is lots of material in this slide. You will have access to them later on. We rely on nature, and it's in the heart of any decision that we need to be taking. The biotic interactions, the species richness around us, the genetic diversity among us, the ecological processes that we rely and depend on, the functional traits that biodiversity provides us with, which is very important for our well-being, and so on. So that's mainly to refresh our minds on where we stand and how biodiversity interacts with the rest, right? From what you see on the left-hand side now, which is these ecosystems based on the biodiversity as an anchor, right? And all the processes that we saw in this butterfly, the previous slide, ecosystems have function. These functions, if they are in a good state or if they are in a good condition, they could provide them, right? If they provide these functions, then we could, as social or socioeconomic systems, depend on, which means our nutrition, which means the clean air we breathe, the water, the clean water we drink, our health, all of that depends on that foundation, plus the values. So we have some economical values. We finally sell natural products to others, and we live from what we sell. So if this foundation or this anchor is lost, it has a certain value that we need to be very well aware. What happens if the responses are, in a way or another, the responses being what we do at the level of institutions, governance, businesses, policies, different sectors, right? All of that is influencing finally this state or condition of ecosystems, and we need to find the right balance. And now about the ecosystem services, that's just to highlight again that the ecosystem services rely on the supply of the services, and that is quite closely linked to a well-functioning ecosystem, meaning a healthy biodiversity. So understanding that biodiversity is the anchor of anything we do, we need to make sure that any action, any management, any practice, any decision we take on biodiversity, which means us and the surroundings, the natural surroundings, needs to be sustainable. That was just a basis to have very clearly in mind. And now we go on where we are. No, so the report that came 2 days ago from the CBD, that was the long-awaited global report on biodiversity, came with a headline that humanity is at a crossroads. Right? It's not the first one. There has been lots of very important global and regional reports coming the last few years. They all are going to the same indication. They are alerting on the escalating human impacts on ecological systems. They are raising the concerns about the consequences on human well-being. So finally, it's clearly now linked that if we do not manage our systems or we live better in harmony with nature, these would have effects on our human well-being. And they call urgently for transformative change in how we see and we link with nature. That's a report. It's a pity that this is, yeah, okay. I'll try to put it that way so you can see also the sources of my slides. That's the report that came last year, last May, the report on the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. That was the first global assessment done at all levels. And it came out last May 2019, calling for this unprecedented nature dangerous decline and species extinction rates that are really accelerating in the last decades. And they link this through an assessment of more than 4,000 scientists to 5 direct drivers of change in nature, which are directly linked to our human activity, being changes in land and sea use. So this is how we are changing our environment, our biodiversity around it, the direct exploitation of organisms, climate change, pollution, and invasive alien species, being the 5 major direct drivers of change in nature with the largest relative global impact on us and our systems. More, I think, interestingly, now going out of biodiversity and biodiversity protection to socio-economical systems, also last year, the World Economic Forum published the Global Risk Report 2019 that for the first time, and that's really alarming, it pushes, I don't know if you can see on the diagram, the 5, I think there are 5 green cubes that are highest on the slide. So that's where the impact on livelihoods is highest, that corner, up right corner, where you can see the green ones being extreme weather events, natural disaster, man-made environmental disasters, and biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse. These are out of the most worrying risks on global economy. So for the first time, the economical or socio-economical system is alarming about the impacts that we are doing on nature and the need to rethink what we do. And 2 days ago, this Global Biodiversity Outlook report that I just mentioned to you published that report, calling again for the need for transformative changes urgently to ensure human well-being and save the planet. So it's a direct message that we need to act. So this calls for a shift in the way we do business as usual across any sector and any activity we do and across ecosystems. It underlines the urgent need to act to slow and end further biodiversity loss. It outlines 8 transitions, so how we can really ensure these transformative changes, and it highlights certain examples in order to reach the vision of 2050, that's living in harmony with nature. Very well. So these to me are just also to put us all in where what the situation is and the need to really start implementing rather than doing using the conceptual approaches of ecosystem-based management. So what is ecosystem-based management? It's a tool, it's a holistic management tool to manage and use natural resources in a more sustainable way. It recognizes all the interactions within ecosystems, including humans being part of these biodiversity and ecosystems, rather than considering single issues, species, or ecosystem services in isolation. That's mainly the definition of EBM. So how can we ensure transformative changes? And that's an interesting, simple slide from Noah. That's just showing literally how the current practices are. These conventional management we still do. We did that a few decades ago on land, and we destroyed more of our land and land ecosystems, and now we are still doing that on the sea. So shifting from current practices to the goal, that's ecosystem-based management, means looking at the ecosystems globally, entirely holistic, not looking at an individual species, but looking at the habitat itself, multiple species, their interactions, not looking at a human single activity, but looking at the cumulative activities and their impact on the ecosystems. So that's also for you, for more resources. It has several principles. No, ecosystem-based management, it needs to be built on knowledge. So we need to have a good baseline of understanding of where we are, what we are doing before taking our actions and decisions. We need to include all human activities, all the uses in what we plan, and not to take a single use or a single species. We need collaborative decision-making processes. So we need to co-design. People from different entities, from different fields of work need to come together and work together on that, on a final decision and practice to be developed. It needs to be sustainable on the longer term. We cannot plan for 1, 2, or 3 years. We need to plan for 10, 20, and 30 years at least. It needs to adapt and be flexible in time because things change, ecosystems change, and we need to have an adaptive management. It needs to be tailored, so depending on the space, on the time, our decisions might change, and they might change several times during the process, and this needs to be flexible enough to ensure that we adapt to this nature that surrounds us, that we are managing and planning. And co-governance is a very important angle. So there are many people that use natural resources, and they all need to be engaged in these processes through effective partnerships, through clear roles, through clear responsibility. That's, from my side, just to show an example from what is the traditional or this approach we tend to use. That's the single species or sector. I'm interested in fisheries, I would go to fisheries. I'm interested in that species, I go and I just extract whatever I need from it. That's it, my role is this one. Ecosystem-based management is a total shift in that sense. So one species of interest is among an ecosystem. We need to understand all the species that depend in a way, or this species depends on, or sector that depend on other sectors in order to do our planning. And these ecosystem-based management approach need to be done for spaces around all the activities that are planned in that space. Very well. Now, while applying the EBM, these ecosystem-based management approach, we need to ensure that it's long-term, as we mentioned, and it ensures this socio-ecological resilience. So when we plan it, and now it's more into the course and this training that's much more linked to coastal and marine environments, the MSP processes, so the marine spatial planning processes, they need to embrace EBM, not only on paper, but really in the real processes. These are long-term processes that every country, every region need to be doing, and they need to ensure all these principles that we discussed before, they are integrated with them, because they would ensure then the long-term socio-ecological resilience, so the resilience of the ecological system, but also the local socio-economies of the spaces that are planned, and they would include the uncertainties, which are the future, how things will be changing. We need to be adaptable, so that needs to include these, as well as the conflictive uses. A space is a limited entity, and the decisions need to make sure that they are sustainable and they are inclusive. And here with our colleague Amir Abdullah, we had worked on a conceptual approach on where we are, or how the systems, if they are normally managed, so this business as usual, in many cases, especially in the Mediterranean, that's a hotspot for many of us, the systems are literally collapsing and the future is not promising. So as you could see, there is this ecosystem resilience thresholds that we normally planning a year by year, on a year-by-year perspective, being reactive to any problem we have, managing individual species or individual habitats or individual sectors is not going in the right direction. And the future, as I mentioned, is not promising. So we need to shift from this way of management into an incremental ecosystem-based management approach, which means managing functional traits, managing groups of species, managing habitats, and managing sensitive ecosystems, ideally. That's linked to this integrated approach of managing several sectors under one entity, under one site, coordinate the management at different levels, so it can go from local to global level. The systems are connected and our management needs to be also effective in that sense. Managing 3 to 5 years perspective, and managing activities with these flexibilities in mind, that if something happens, we need to adapt and change based on that need. The tools that are used so far for that, it's mainly about linked to protection and conservation, while for the others, that's much less restrictive. And this is where, this is the third step that's really important to integrate and embrace this socio-ecological resilience point of view in order to bend the curve and to create future resilient systems and environments. And how this is done mainly by managing holistically the ecosystems and proactively engaging whenever it's needed, looking into the future, looking to the upcoming few years. So as you see, this is a long-term perspective of 20 or more years. It's managing ecosystem functions, it's managing the processes and their services at all times, and adapting to the situation as needed, and managing all sectors together in a co-management perspective, engaging the stakeholders that need to be engaged. So this is a little bit this introduction towards these concepts and the practices that need to be done. I will, as I mentioned, I will be sharing these slides, and in case of questions, please do ask, and we will try with the time that we have allocated to reply to them. And now I want to just go quickly to this initiative that has started since 2016. I'm coordinating since then. It has been funded, or it is still being funded, that's the second stage of it, by the Interreg Mediterranean program. The community is called the Mediterranean Biodiversity Protection Community. It includes by now around 300 institutions, mainly Mediterranean and European, and promotes and defends these concerns that I have been raising before, defending the need for effective biodiversity management, for the need for using practically ecosystem-based approaches in practices and decision-making, and fostering a constant dialogue among different stakeholders, including policymakers, protected area managers, scientists, the private sector that we try more and more to include in the discussions in order to achieve a longer term, more sustainable development goals. That's, I think, my last slide, and that's just a representation of part of this community that's during the European Parliament Act that we had in December 2018, where we have set this declaration on ecosystem-based approaches, and that has been then signed by several regional stakeholders, including policymakers and local governors and lots of scientists and NGOs. So we work inside marine protected areas. It's a coastal marine community mainly. We have a focus on what needs to be done inside marine protected areas, more effectiveness, more connectivity, ensuring the functionalities of the ecosystems. But we are also very sure that that cannot be only the limitation. We need to go broader. We need to work on the whole coastal and sea space, ensuring ecosystem-based approaches, practices being implemented and effectively taking shape in the future. From my side, I think that's it. I would like to have the video. I think that's, yeah, these are my main messages. I think these 5 points that I have discussed before. And before closing the presentation, I would be really happy to show you a 3-minute video on the content of this ecosystem-based management declaration, and I would be really happy if you join these concerns, and if you would like to be a signatory of it, you can always let us know. Okay, I don't know if Liz, you would be showing us the...
It's me, Dania. It's Mireia. I will share my screen with the video.
Thank you.
Sorry, I cannot hear anything. Is it me or?
I think
it's everyone. It's everyone, I think, yeah.
Okay, so while we fix this, I think there is a question. Maybe Dania, you can answer. There was a question in the chat, actually, not in the Q and answer. You refer to multiple species. So the question is, what do you mean by multiple species? We have to know the most biodiversity for a better management. So I guess if you can explain why you refer to multiple species looking at ecosystem-based management.
Yes, yeah, so the traditional way of managing, for example, taking fisheries as an example, the target is one species. No, there is an interest on getting more of one economically valuable fish type, and going and getting as much as we can from it because we can sell it. So that approach is normally selective. So you are going to target one species because it's of your interest, but you don't go into the ecology of that species. So this species is a predator of another one, for example. So you need to understand this ecological functional cycle, and based on that, take the decision of the top that you can get out of the species, when you can fish that species, and so on. So that's an example, but this needs to apply to any type of resource we extract from the ecosystems. You cannot look at what you want. You need to understand the ecological function of this species, just to make sure that you are not extracting one and keeping the ecosystem without it. I don't know if this is clearer for the person that asked, or I'm happy then to reply by with more specific details if needed.
We have another question, Dania, from Marta Pascual. She says, I totally agree that understanding socio-ecological reliance is key. However, having in mind that few socio-ecological indicators are gathered, what data or indicators would be, in your view, those essential ones that we would need to gather so as to include in this information on the marine spatial planning?
Yes. Hello, Marta. Happy to know that you are there. So yeah, certainly, I mean, data is fundamental. So we need to make sure that we have the right indicators in order to include them in our system. Indicators, to me, of course, it's one of the, I think, most complex things to agree on at a global level. Socio-ecological resilience, it certainly needs to ensure having constance of how the society well-being is and how the ecosystem well-being is. There are processes. The UNCCE is already developing these standards of natural capital, these standards of how to include and account for natural capital in national and subnational systems. They are developing indicators that go in that direction, whether for per ecosystem account or across ecosystems. There has been work that has been done for the last at least 15 years. This is being applied also in Europe. That's starting to getting applied at an experimental level, and hopefully within the biodiversity strategy to 2030, not only ecosystem services, but ecosystem accounting or natural capital accounting will be a factor that will be suggested to be implemented at member states level. So there is a movement towards harmonizing indicators in that sense, and these would need to ensure that the local socio-economy is sustained. So this long-term process of understanding the well-being, right, as part of the systems, plus understanding the sustainability of the ecological systems as well. So just understanding the condition based on a baseline condition, how the trends are varying, and adapting the systems based on this, I would say, baseline standard that is set. There are examples. I'm personally engaged in this MAES process, this mapping and assessing ecosystem and ecosystem services with the European Commission. And these days I have been quite busy in seeing what would be the priority for the 2030 strategy. And clearly such accounting will be one element to consider by 2030. So there is a process on that. I hope I replied also to this. There are reports I can share with you. I mean, several of the reports that we have been busy doing with clear indicators for the natural ecosystems, for the socioeconomic ecosystems. But of course, they are not standardized. This is the standards that has been set for Europe. It's very much linked with the United Nations standards for natural accounting. But of course, I guess there are other good practices from other places, maybe from Australia and so on, that could be also looked at.
Thanks, Dania, for this very extensive answer. We have one more question, but I would like Rita maybe to start playing the second video. And while she does that, I'll just tell you that Mr. Hervé Tsaric is asking, traditional spatial or physical planning has holistic, integrated, long-term approach similar to your goals. His question is, what is the potential role of the marine spatial planning in your environmental-based management approach? So if there is no sound, Rita, to the video, maybe you can start playing the video while Dania is answering, or otherwise you can start playing the video and then Dania can answer once we are done in short.
Yeah, do you want to try, Mireia? Okay. Else, of course, I mean, that this tool, this ecosystem-based management tool, it is just a tool. It is to be used in processes. The MSP, the marine spatial planning, is a process by itself. It is to be planned and to be implemented, but it needs to englobe these practices, meaning that the principles that we have discussed before, they need to be part of the system. Stakeholder engagement needs to start when the planning is starting, not at the end of the planning, as we now normally tend to do. So stakeholders, especially the local resource managers, the local protected area managers, the local stakeholders, the local users, the local population, science, they need to be as part of these practices from the start. Meaning that if we are planning for a sector, all the other sectors need to be part of what we understand that the solution will be. It's about engaging from the start until the end. And I see EBM, so these ecosystem-based management, as a tool to be adapted to any process, including the marine spatial planning process, any process of planning, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Dania. I think we are ready to move further. I would like to introduce to you Alejandro Iglesias Campos and Andrea Barbanti, who will be talking about knowledge-based maritime spatial planning. So please, Alejandro, can you start with your presentation?
There it is. Good morning, everyone. May I go ahead, Draško?
Yes, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alejandro Iglesias Campos, and I currently have the position of Program Specialist for Integrated Coastal Area Management, Marine Spatial Planning and Sustainable Blue Economy at the Marine Policy and Regional Coordination section of IOC of UNESCO. I'm currently as well dealing with as a coordinator of MSP Global, and it is my pleasure to join you today to share our institutional experiences.
Alejandro, if I can stop you just for a second, we can't see you, so there's no video stream from your side.
Very good. Now you see me.
Yep, thank you.
Now, yes. Let me start by sharing with you this, how or what of UNESCO for MSP. Our institution defined in 2006 marine spatial planning as the public process of analyzing and allocating spatial and temporal distribution of human activities in order to achieve ecological, economic, and social objectives that are usually specified through a public political policy process led by governmental institutions. And a public process including all maritime sectors, as Daniel just mentioned, that considers alternative means to achieve a common vision for a country with emphasis on performance, monitoring, and evaluation, but learning by doing. And all of this building a broad-based stakeholders to ensure long-term support for management of marine spaces that people can understand, relate to, and care for, by taking into account the complex dynamic nature of ecosystems with a focus on maintaining ecosystems services over the time. This is how IOC of UNESCO defines the MSP concept. Ecosystem borders do not correspond to those administrative and boundaries defined in national jurisdictions, and the list of authorities in each country that should give direct attention to connections within an ecosystem. Ecosystem-based management is a way to accelerate the co-development of innovation by achieving a greater coherence in the context of planning. But much more than that, it regulates a better environmental status that is not planning per se. It is currently used as the basis for sustainable blue economy strategies, facilitates the management of coastal risk hazards, promote monitoring and surveillance with the support of the private sector, which is the case in many examples we have identified across the world, increases scientific knowledge and MSP multidisciplinarity and multi-sectoral approaches, which are the most transparent way to cooperate across borders and to ensure the implementation of multinational agreements that in complex and busy regions like our Mediterranean Sea. In 2005, member states of IOC requested our institution to include marine spatial planning as part of our agenda, our institutional agenda, and the need of clear guidance on ecosystem-based marine spatial planning to complement the work that we started in the 90s with integrated coastal area management. In 2006, we organized the first international workshop on MSP. And in order to review the state of the art, in order to discuss with experts from around the world on the practices developing MSP, 3 years later, in 2009, we launched the guide that you may know, that is on screen, that is one of the most used MSP guides available by our member states. The guide uses a clear, straightforward, step-by-step approach to show how marine spatial planning can be set up and applied towards achieving ecosystem-based management. The step-by-step methodology that you see on the screen as well provides as well the support in order to have a coherent planning, which requires the sharing of MSP relevant information. National authorities, as you know, may face the double challenge of measuring cumulative effects on ecosystems, but also assessing the needs of interconnected ecosystems. The guide provides first understanding what marine spatial planning is, a clear definition of the steps and tasks to set up a successful marine spatial planning initiative in a country that can help achieving ecosystem-based management, and also awareness on what has worked and what has not around the world. In 2017, the number of countries approving MSP processes increased to 65, with more than 10% of world's economic exclusive zones covered by government-approved MSP. And at the same year, IOC and the European Commission jointly organized the second international MSP conference, where experts from all over the world show different levels of implementation of MSP processes in their countries and at regional scale, including areas where MSP was still in its infancy and where jointly learning, improved cooperation, and capacity building were still required, like today. These were the basis to launch the joint roadmap to accelerate MSP processes worldwide in support of the Agenda 2030. IOC and the European Commission moved forward the Global Ocean Agenda. This joint roadmap, as you can see there with the list of priority actions, defines has strategic objectives for mutual cooperation and a specific one on ecosystem-based MSP. Most countries and regions are currently rethinking their ocean ecosystem-based economies. Preliminary analysis and evaluations are being developed on the impacts of MSP to increase the stability, transparency, and predictability of the investment climate. And MSP processes are expanding worldwide. Investment in ocean-based businesses become less risky with an MSP in place. And this is what the task that we are doing with our member states. Ongoing MSP transboundary initiatives, especially cooperation between the responsible national agencies, have contributed to increasing knowledge, experience, and also data sharing among neighboring countries. They have helped as well building capacities and even triggered a political drive in certain countries. A lot of efforts are invested in project initiatives like the MSP Global and the WestMed initiative with the MSP Mediterranean cases, or institutional coordination at global level. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of challenges to deal with. We have limited knowledge and regarding the complexity and state of marine ecosystems and the impact that cumulative impact of certain activities have on them. We lack a coherent strategy for marine data collection, how to organize this data and how to map it. We cannot plan or sustainably use what we do not know that exists. In 2020, from IOC-UNESCO, we continue supporting our member states, increasing their capacities to implement MSP in their respective jurisdictions. A recent survey showed an increase of countries implementing MSP initiatives, many of them in early stages, but all efforts are welcome if we manage to cover by 2030 the 30% of our EEZ with government-approved MSP plans. Marine spatial planning, I think I will repeat what Dania mentioned, but I think it's important to insist, reduce conflict among the different uses that are and uses demands that are from traditional sectors, emerging sectors, and sectors that will be and will show up in the future. Reduce these conflicts, encourage investment because it provides certainty, increase the coordination at institutional level, at sectorial level, increase cross-border cooperation. And we are not saying here that we need to have an MSP plan between 2, 3 or more countries, which is the case of the Mediterranean. That will not happen. But at least to provide coherence amongst the different plans that are in many cases overlapping in regions like, which is the case of the Mediterranean. But it also helps to protect the environment and to decide on specific measures that can have a better result for the marine ecosystems. And by resolving conflicts and regulating these marine activities, MSP can definitely make a significant contribution to achieving a healthy and sustainable marine ecosystem in connection with blue economies, blue economy initiatives. More information about our work is available in our institutional website, IOC-UNESCO.org, as well as in our social media. And there you have as well the links for the MSP Global Initiative and the Ocean Decade coordinated by my institution. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Alejandro. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. We were planning to play 2 videos plus a video for the break. So we are going to take now the other part of this lecture, which is going to be done by Andrea. And after we will play both videos that we couldn't play earlier. And then you will have a 10 minutes break anyway with the coffee break video. So this is the plan, and I'm now happy to give the floor to Andrea. And Draško, I'm having a problem with my computer. Can you please switch off my microphone and video?
Okay, thank you, Caterina. Thank you, Draško. Hope you can hear me well, and hope you can see my screen. Sorry, I'm trying to. Can you confirm, Caterina, please?
Yes, we see you well. And actually, just for the participants, we are going to take your questions for both speakers, Alejandro and Andrea, after Andrea's presentation. I can see there are already 2. So hold on, we will answer those questions. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much again, Caterina. Good morning again, everyone. And let me start saying that I'm actually really proud and very excited as BlueMed team, as myself and as BlueMed team on this initiative that was developed together with MBPC and UNESCO IOC, and already said and introduced, and really look forward to have all trainees, trainers, and speakers in Venice next year, hopefully with much less COVID problems, of course. A brief introduction of me. Back from several years, back to research from several years in the sector. I am now, and since almost 10 years, acting as a research manager at the National Research Council, Institute of Marine Sciences, and I'm based in Venice. I mainly work on science to policy activities, projects, and initiatives on blue growth at national EU, and then I'm focused on the Mediterranean mainly. Part of the BlueMed project team, management team, and I'm involved, and I was also coordinating a number of research projects and pilot projects on dealing with specifically with MSP and its connection with ecosystem-based management and sustainable blue growth. I'm presently national focal point for UNESCO IOC DG Mare MSP Global Initiative, and I'm also co-coordinating a team that is providing scientific technical assistance to the Italian MSP competent authority in developing the Italian MSP plans, which you know are due as for all other EU member states by March 21. Alejandro gave a very concise but effective introduction on MSP. So the question is how to use the next 10 minutes. I decided to, and agreed with Alejandro, to focus on the importance of knowledge in the MSP process, trying to convincing you that MSP is a great playground, battleground if you want, to experiment science, policy, society interaction in ecosystem-based marine resources management, which is actually one of the reasons for using MSP in our course. I will touch upon a few basic concepts, leaving, of course, to the course the task of deepening. I'm trying to go to the next slide. Okay, here it is. The statement is MSP is a science to policy society challenge. It's a complex game involving many players, many disciplines and sectors, many environments. If you want, knowledge is a sort of necessary underlying cross-cutting layer to MSP. But even not to considering knowledge gaps that we always have, knowledge is not enough. And it's not enough for a number of reasons, which sometimes will be interesting to discuss with you. Not necessarily and not always decisions, as you know, are based on best knowledge available for a number of reasons that will be interesting to discuss with you lively in Venice next March. The importance of MSP and the need for multidisciplinary research and innovation informing MSP is recognized as a priority in the strategic research and innovation agenda and the implementation plan of the BlueMed initiative. Is one of the 13 priority goals that the countries agreed to recognize as a priority in the process and the initiative. And this is not only the result of an analysis and a decision made by a group of scientists, which is not sufficient, but is in fact the result of an extensive consultation in most made countries, EU and non-EU, endorsed by country representatives, the Commission and the Union for the Mediterranean. You see in this slide mentioned a reference to the draft implementation plan that was recently released by the Coordination and Support Action of the BlueMed initiative and endorsed by the advisory board of the initiative. You may have a look in more detail to this implementation plan and to the strategic research innovation agenda, which is the backbone of the implementation plan. But what is knowledge for MSP in MSP? Knowledge that will eventually allow us to go from data and information to wisdom. Knowledge inputs to MSP may or should regard conceptual tools and methodological approaches, and these may regard the overall planning process or specific tasks as stakeholder management, engagement, or others. They may regard data, geoportals, and decision support tools. There is a wide variety of tools in the literature and in the practices around Europe and the world. A third element is very wide, actually, and concerns the understanding of ecosystem functioning at different spatial scale and temporal scales. And finally, we need to be able to integrate horizontally all vertical knowledge on multiple disciplines, which, if you want, brings us back to the conceptual models and approaches we use. Not an easy task then, and we have to recognize, to know from the beginning actually, that we need time for this. You can see in the slide the example of 15, 20 now actually years of experience of the MSP process in the Baltic. So it's a long story actually everywhere. And we need well-established and managed iterative and adaptive planning processes that are continuously fed and informed by existing and new knowledge. This is the best and most important guarantee that we will use knowledge-based MSP. Time and iterative processes, properly organized and managed. I stress this point again. What is clear and evident, nevertheless, is that we cannot plan what we don't know. It was already mentioned in the previous presentations. In most cases, I would say, we know enough to develop good plans. So knowledge must not be an excuse for not planning, actually. But still, there are, or maybe, several important gaps that lead you to wrong decisions in many cases. Here are just a couple of examples that regard the insufficient knowledge on seafloors, particularly in deep sea areas. Please consider, as far as the Mediterranean is concerned, that most of the basin is has a water depth of more than 200 meters, so is by definition deep sea. So it's very important, and it's a large, wide issue. And another example is on the distribution, variability, and effects of underwater noise, which is related to impulsive or continuous sources. I'm referring to oil and gas exploration. I'm referring to installation of wind farms. I'm referring to traffic mainly, if we speak about continuous sources, maritime traffic. And these are only two examples of main knowledge gaps that we have to fill for a good knowledge-based plan. Now, while there is, and it was very well explained in previous presentation, general connection with ecosystem-based management of marine resources, MSP may have a direct and specific connection with the marine protected area. And the slide wants to stress these direct linkages. MSP can support the creation of new MPAs and can make them coherent with the overall MSP plan now and its trajectory in time. Don't forget that MSP is future-oriented, is dynamic in principle. MSP can improve the functioning of MPAs and the effectiveness of MPA by planning coherently sea uses in surrounding areas, so not only in the MPA per se, and promoting, for example, connectivity and reducing impact of sea uses on MPAs per se. This has to do a lot with knowledge, site-specific, and on the interactions, positive and negative, between MPAs and sea uses, which is, by the way, the topic that was specifically addressed, targeted in the Pharos for MPAs project, the BlueMed Pharos for MPAs project that is mentioned here, and that is, by the way, part of the MBPC community. Again, already mentioned, all these knowledge elements must be conveyed toward in stakeholder engagement processes, which are an essential phase of this science to policy to society effort exercise. Sorry, just a second. Okay, all this requires a specific knowledge. So it's not only a matter of conveying different types of knowledge, but to use a specific knowledge to design, manage, and carry out these stakeholder engagement exercises. We all recognize that this is needed to have more transparent and robust plans, that there are a number of approaches and techniques that may be used. And you see here in the slide, for example, a very nice manual on grouping, clustering, and presenting and discussing these techniques. And this should be done considering case-specific objectives and boundary conditions, the phase of the process you're in, and whether you are in a formal or in an informal consultation process. There are big differences between the two. So, as I was mentioning at the beginning, this is my last slide, the beginning of this short presentation, we will use MSP as a test bed, as a laboratory, to see and discuss if and how knowledge-based marine conservation and marine sciences are streamlined into planning and management of marine spaces and marine resources. And I'd like to point out, to underline that in particular, on day 2, we will have an interactive session where a number of relevant case studies and experiences will be presented and discussed with the trainees and with all the people attending the meeting, focusing among the others on the topics that I briefly mentioned and that were mentioned by the other speakers and will be mentioned, I guess, by Chris and JB in their lesson, in the lecture after mine. and on the lessons learned in these case studies. So please consider this presentation only as an appetizer of what you will find at the course. And I'm speaking now to the attendees to the webinar that will be also attending as trainees the course. With this, I guess I can conclude my presentation and give the floor back to Katerina or Draško.
I'll take the floor.
Yeah, Katerina, just I'd like to invite you during the coffee break, but Katerina may mention it before, to have a look at our 2-minute BlueMed video, which will tell you more about BlueMed. I didn't want to use my time to introduce you more in details BlueMed, but the video will be self-explaining, I guess. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea, but you're not off the hook. There is one question. There were several questions actually in the Q&A chat, but Alejandro already answered his questions in writing, so you can find them there, I hope. Otherwise, we can try to summarize. Maybe Alejandro can summarize them. And I don't know, Andrea, if you can see the question.
I see one open and 12.
Yeah, so the open one is just came in. It's for you to answer if you want.
Sure, I'll do my best. What is the potential link to MSP to area of particular environmental interest tool as integrated area-based management tool for areas beyond national jurisdiction? Sorry, I cannot fully understand the question. I apologize for this. Let me...
Draško, maybe we can give Mercy the microphone so she can elaborate.
So I don't know if Mercy refers to the process on areas beyond the UNESCO process.
I have just allowed Mercy to talk if she can, and I have asked her to unmute herself.
Great, much better.
So she might give you an answer.
Maybe she's referring to the ongoing process on areas beyond national jurisdiction. And she wants to know how MSP can feed or complement and support this process. I don't know.
In that case, I can. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Alejandro, in that case, you are the right one.
Okay. My question was, at the area beyond national jurisdiction, that is beyond the EEZ, there are a lot of activities that are ongoing, including the exploitation and exploration of the seabed activity. And among other tools that have been suggested, one of them is the area of particular environment interest tool, where that if they see this is a specific sensitive area, then that is the tool that can be applied. But again, as MSP advocate, we are also advocating that we can use this MSP tool in the area beyond the national jurisdiction. So I was asking, what is the link? Because you have talked much of the MSP being used within the seascape, but then what are the other potential link of this tool for the areas beyond national jurisdiction?
I think
how do we now incorporate that tool now to our national policy framework so that we're able to come up with policy that speak to that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mercy. I think I leave to Alejandro to answer because he is much more involved than me in this process.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Andreas, as well for your presentation. I believe, I cannot explain directly for the tool you mentioned because I have not been very connected to that, but I know well the work, the CBD Convention, led by UNEP, UN Environment, as well as IOC is doing in areas beyond national jurisdiction. In the Pacific Islands, for example, as you know, more than 98% of the jurisdictions are sea, but connecting each other. They have also areas beyond national jurisdictions that they try to manage jointly. What they have done is to use regional, ecologically and biologically significant areas as the base for marine special planning and the transboundary coherence I mentioned before in my presentation. why they are using this MSP in this IPSAS. First, for marine protection from overfishing. That is the most important question right now, especially for bigger fisheries powers in the region that are taking the resources in many cases illegally and not respecting the international conventions. They are reversing degradation of the coral reefs, ensuring for security as is clear, and also a way to join the efforts among all these small nations to address climate change as well. Because I mean, working together and using the IPSAS, applying ecosystem-based management actions, it reduces as well the CEU's conflict to manage all demands of space they have from national sectors and also international sector or foreign sectors that have an interest. But more, I mean, in Europe, we have an interesting case as well, and following very similar example using the IPSAS in areas beyond national jurisdiction. And this is the case of OSPAR, the OSPAR Commission. And there were the Atlantic European countries joined the effort for similar approaches and define a range of different measures within the proposed IPSAS. And these include legally binding decisions which have been used for the establishment of 11 marine protected areas beyond national jurisdictions, following all OSPAR's guidelines and protocols approved by its member states, and including these management regulations. These are two examples for you to have an overview, and in case this is more linked with the tool you were mentioning.
Thank you, Alejandro. There are two more questions. Wow, three. So first question is MSP becoming a competitor to MPAs, the MPA's approach? Anyone wants to answer this?
Well, if I may, my slide was intended just to briefly touch upon this point. And in fact, I see the two, say, processes or elements, MPAs or network of MPAs and MSP totally complementary. I mean, MSP cannot be properly developed without considering MPAs per se and the management of MPA and the interaction of MPAs with surrounding areas and uses actually. And on the other side, I think that MPAs per se will benefit a lot from the MSP process because they will have the place, the opportunity to grow actually, to consolidate their management processes, to establish new MPAs, for example, to improve ecological connectivities among MPAs. So it's if properly managed and carry out, it's a win-win process. No, I don't see any conflict in the processes and in the content, actually.
Thank you. There are two more questions, or maybe even three. Effective conservation actions in the Mediterranean are normally only successful at very small scale. How can an MSP integrate them so that they're not isolated?
I can take this question unless Alejandro wants to.
Please go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I see your point. Actually, I agree. This is the situation now. And we have many cases where they are not properly or fully effective, even at small scale, due to a number of reasons, mainly related to management. I think, as I was trying to say, that a proper, a good transboundary, and then Alejandro mentioned the EPSA tool and experiences in the Atlantic, OSPAR. I think it can be an opportunity to have improve the efficiency of each small-scale MPA and to have larger MPAs, for example, and connected MPAs. So these should be objectives and part of the vision that the MSP plan should express and should be part of the discussion that countries need to have according to Articles 11 and 12 of the directive, and within the Barcelona Convention, if we want to go beyond the directive, to improve the success of MPAs at small scale, medium, and large scale. I would say MSP is a tool. Is a tool. It's not a goal. It's a tool to reach goals like the ones we are discussing today.
Thank you, Andrea. There is something interesting about the fact that there are different weights in terms of pressure in different sectors. So the question is around how can we use MSP to consolidate the interest of different sectors for management. Sorry, someone is okay. So for management of any specific marine area, I think these are, and there is also another question which is pretty wide. I don't know if you or Alejandro wants to say a few words about it, but I would give you just 2 more minutes because we are running out of time. And maybe we could answer in writing, and then I would like to tell to all the participants, because there have been several questions, that this meeting is recorded, so you can see it offline at some other point. We will provide you all information, and the presentations will also be made available. So don't worry about that. And I guess there will be the possibility to compile all the questions and give simple and clear answers so that nothing is lost. Andrea, do you want to, or Alejandro, do you want to elaborate a little bit on this two
say a few words and then I'll leave the floor to Alejandro. I think that the question is crucial. It requires much more than 2 minutes actually. So I hope you will be attending Jorge. Actually not, I don't recall you as one of the trainees, but maybe you will have the chance to follow the training in streaming if we will be able to do it. So it requires a lot of time. It's a crucial issue. First of all, assessing the effects and the weights of sectors, identifying the trends, and then discussing, balancing strong and weak sectors, building strategic objectives and visions, and then discussing at different scales, at different governance levels, starting from local coastal communities and going up to the international organization. So it's MSP. I do not have much to add. I don't know, Alejandro.
Quickly as well, I mean, the weight of the different sectors in the MSP is a responsibility and an obligation of the government. This is why it's important to have governments approving the plans. An NGO or any other association cannot do that, but the government has the obligation to have all sectors represented and weighted in order for all voices and all needs to be represented and respected. And this does not mean that the traditional sectors should have better voice than the new ones or those sectors that will come in the future. And the same applies with the question regarding the local scale of planning. I mean, in the majority of our countries, and we have land planning or terrestrial planning, and it's the national government the one fixing some regulations that are common for regions, independently if the country is more united or is more federated state. And the regions or the federal states are the ones that are implementing and giving all the definitions to, going to the detail in the planning process. And the case is the planning we have in our municipalities. All our municipalities have an urban plan or a land plan that is part of a bigger regional plan and the national rules. With marine special planning is very similar. If you go to the port of Split in Croatia, the port of Split will follow national planning obligations from the government of Croatia, but it will also have their own specific rules in terms of passengers, in terms of interaction with the local municipality of Split, and other issues that might be important to see in the transboundary area that you have in the Adriatic Sea. Then I think that, again, the government and the authority, national authority, it will be the responsible to make sure the institutional framework of each country, of their state, is fully involved to make the planning effective and durable in time.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. There are other questions, but I would pause here for now. As I said, we can answer those questions in writing or maybe later during the general discussion. What I suggest now we do is I will ask the two video angels to run the MBPC video first, then the BlueMed video second, and I think both altogether is 5 minutes around that time, and then we will have a 10 minutes break, so you can do whatever you like. I would recommend you watch the first two videos. In the break video, there is nothing really to watch. There is nice music though. And other nice images depending on the setting. But the first two videos are part of this school, and they explain you who are the organizer and what are the general concepts. Then after this, we will have the two more, one presentation which is split in two, and then the final discussion. And we will try to make up for the 15 minutes delay that we have at this moment. So this is the plan, please.
United for effective actions to protect the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean's diversity of plants and animals, biodiversity, is an amazing gift to us. They play a crucial role in our lives. Wetlands, rocky shores, sandy beaches, seagrass meadows host an amazing variety of life, which are all part of an interconnected ecosystem. This Mediterranean ecosystem is part of our daily life, and it provides essential goods and benefits like clean air, water, and healthy food. However, overexploitation, pollution, unsustainable fisheries and climate change are affecting the balance. Human activities have become a major threat to our sea and to our daily lives. We need to act now. Many Mediterranean people, social organizations, companies and institutions are well aware of this need. Our community, over 200 partners in the region, has worked for 3 years to create a common base for our shared goal. We have practiced a constant dialogue, exchanging experiences and knowledge, linking science, management and policy actors. We have discovered that solutions to protect our environment need to be designed beyond borders, free from self-interest and short-term economic gain, and have then created the Mediterranean Declaration for an ecosystem-based approach. Our declaration is an important step to protecting our future. Its main points of action are to acknowledge the value of and threats to the Mediterranean, to engage in dialogue and cooperation with all economic sectors for a sustainable future, to exchange experiences and good practices to influence better policies and practices, to activate cooperation mechanisms for effective biodiversity conservation and ecosystem management. Sign up and share our declaration for the Mediterranean today, because together we are stronger and more effective. All together for a better Mediterranean.
Now I wish to have the BlueMed video.
I would just like to point out to the attendees that while we are waiting this video, that we all kind of agree that we would like to make this webinar a little bit more interactive. So in the last session, we will ask you to raise the hand if you would like to join in the discussion. But in order for this to be a little bit more interactive, so we can see you and we can chat, we will try to raise your position to the position of the panelists, so you will be able to interact with us. So I would just like to kind of advise you that if you plan to join in, just check your equipment so that you have the microphone and the video ready. So if we manage to get you in, that you can actually participate.
Well, this is the time to break. So you have 10 minutes and there might be a video starting soon. So let's resume at 11:21. And thanks for your patience so far and your participation. See you in a bit.
Hello all. I hope you have managed to have a short refreshment and that you are ready for our continuation. I would now like to give floor to Jean-Baptiste Jouffret and Chris Cvitanovic, and they will chat with you and present the topic on science for complex socio-ecological systems. So, Jean-Baptiste, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dracos. Is this working? We can share the screen.
It's working. We can see you and hear you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Drasco. Well, hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Jean-Baptiste Jouffret. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Stockholm Resilience Center at Stockholm University. And it's my pleasure today to be talking to you all about the narrow topic that is science for complex marine socio-ecological system in 15 minutes. So given the scope of it, obviously, and we can't touch upon everything. So the idea is to start with a little bit of the big picture of what is this complex marine socio-ecological system at a global scale, and then try to discuss examples of what kind of science can help make sense of it. But if we start with the big picture, as I said, let's start with the Anthropocene, which is this idea of a new epoch where humans have become a dominant force of planetary change. So pervasive all over the planet. And what characterized the Anthropocene, it's not specifically when it started, and this is quite controversial in case of what's the beginning of the Anthropocene, but regardless whether you agree on a date or whether you even consider it a new geological epoch, where it's very useful is as an analytical framework to explore and understand what the changes we're seeing means from a social ecological perspective and how we can steer them towards a more sustainable and equitable future. That's the approach I take with the Anthropocene. It's characterized by speed, by scale, and by connectivity, the three of them being unprecedented in human history. And maybe one of the most iconic illustration of this idea of the Anthropocene is the Great Acceleration, the work by Stefan and colleagues that shows an exponential increase in a wide range of socioeconomic and Earth system trends, with a sharp increase from the 1950s, where across the board, it's skyrocketing. Another way to conceptualize it, and more recently published, is the idea of a global production ecosystem that is the result of three trends: the conversion of the Earth biosphere into simplified production ecosystem, the increased intensification and dependence of these production ecosystems on human inputs. That's the whole notion of intensifying and optimizing production. And of course, they're expanding connectivity through global market. And you can see on the figure here that it integrates multiple sectors, right? Whether it's agriculture, aquaculture, fisheries, forestry. This is here with a focus on harvestable biomass. And if you look at it from more of a resilience perspective, through the lenses of connectivity, diversity, and feedback, which are principles of resilience, you realize that this global production ecosystem has become hyper-connected, globally homogenized, and with weak feedback. And this has consequences. One of them is the global land use change that has been talked about previously today, the economic globalization, and to sometimes the looming land scarcity. As we are consuming more, we need more resources. And in parallel to this, we're seeing rapid technological innovation, particularly in the marine realm, which gives us access to resources and a domain that were unthinkable even 20 years ago and not least 50 years ago. Here's an illustration on the top left of like seabed mining prototype machinery, right, that actually have been built while we're going down to 11,000 meters below the sea and starting farming offshore as well. So the result of this is that you have growing aspiration for the ocean as the next frontier for human development. And you can see it in the media, right? The ocean could be the new gold rush. It can provide food. It can provide fresh water if we desalinate. It can tackle climate change. It's the treasure for new antibiotics or new medicines. It's also communication, oil and gas, technology, mining, and so on and so on. It's all over the place, and it's overwhelming, and usually gather under the umbrella of a blue economy. What we did in a recent paper was to try to really systematically map every single of those aspirations that we have on the ocean and categorize them under 3 broad needs of humanity, which are food, material, and space. And under those categories, you can see that we really are going for the ocean for a wide range of resources or needs, from seafood to feeds for other type of food, to oil and gas, minerals, fresh water, as I said, genetic resources, and of course, a lot of this ocean space used for pipelines, cables, shipping, and so on. If you look at the trend of those different ocean claims that humanity is making, well, it looks familiar, right? And we called it the blue acceleration, very much in the spirit of Stephen's works on the Great Acceleration. You see the same pattern across a wide range of ocean uses. But starting a little bit later, this really takes off at the onset of the 21st century with a sharp increase that characterized a new human relationship with the ocean that is once again unprecedented. And this is what you could call the Anthropocene ocean. We are moving into the ocean, we're expanding into the ocean at an exponential rate and across a wide range of sectors. And of course, same as on land, this comes at a cost. Those are only a few, but they are quite iconic. This is a dead zone in Rio de Janeiro with millions of fish dead. This is bleached corals in Indonesia. We're seeing more and more of those. Frequency and intensity of hurricanes and heat waves are increasing. And of course, the issue of marine plastic that has been mentioned already with the stomach content of a black-footed albatross in Hawaii that's being pictured here. So the real question is how to make sense of this new reality. Like, how do we, as scientists, what kind of science is needed to grasp the complexity of this new ocean reality? And I would start by mentioning this idea of a biosphere-based sustainability science. So on the left here, you have the conventional view of the 3 pillars of what sustainability should be. And it's supposedly at the intersection of the environment, the society, and the economy. However, a bit more later on, what was suggested was to flip over that diagram and to actually acknowledge that without a functioning biosphere, you do not have a functioning society. And then only then can you have a functioning economy. So this is a small tweak, but it's a really important one in the framing to recognize that both the economy and society are actually embedded within the biosphere. They are intertwined and they need the biosphere to be able to flourish, which is different from seeing them as independent and intersecting. And this is something you find a lot in the visualization of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, right? And here it's goal 14, life below water, that is the focus of this slide. But it really communicates that you need those 4 SDG about life below water, life on land, clean water, and climate action before you can even consider tackling no poverty, sustainable diets, and so on, before you can consider maybe decent work and economic growth. So you have this hierarchy where the biosphere is very foundational and at the bottom. So this is one mind shift that is increasingly needed, both from the science side, but also from the policy and civil society. It's to recognize this embeddedness of planet people. Another aspect that is needed is to extend famous and well-known framework to the marine realm. So I'm thinking about the planetary boundaries concept, for instance, that was published more than a decade ago now. And this paper 3 years ago, making the point that you need to better integrate marine system within the planetary boundaries framework. Otherwise, you're missing key variables that contributes to ecosystem biomes. And you're seeing that with the IPCC as well, moving very much in the right direction with the special report on the cryosphere and on the ocean that was published last year, I believe, that really had a sole focus on the ocean rather than terrestrial system. So there is this need to move and to better integrate the marine dynamics. Then, of course, you can think of new ecological paradigms. And here the idea is to say that, well, human, social, cultural, and economic processes must become an integral part of ecological theory and practice as much as biological, geological, and physical processes are today. It's a bit of a long sentence, but what it captures is the idea that if you look back maybe 200, 300 years ago on the left, this is what your typical coral reef, to take one ecosystem in particular, coral reef ecosystem would look like. It would mostly be driven by biophysical forcing, right? Natural variables such as seawater temperature, primary production, wave energy. And then you would have a little bit of effluent maybe and subsistence fishing. But you could predict your reef ecosystem based on those biophysical variables. Well, what a bunch of researchers have shown is that now if you look at your reef ecosystem and if you try to predict its states based on biophysical variables, you won't predict anything. And it's much better predicted if you take into consideration the myriad of anthropogenic pressure that are now surround reefs. So the biophysical forcing still are there and they still matter, but they are superimposed by a wide network and a complex network of both direct pressure and indirect, more distal pressure, thinking of human migration, urbanization, trade, of course, and climate change, among other. And it's really this idea. I think there is another example is a study a couple of years ago that looked at the distribution of a lizard species across islands. And if they were trying to model this distribution by applying biogeography theories of species distribution, they couldn't explain anything almost of the distribution of the lizard. And then they overlaid the shipping routes. And suddenly they reach 80–90% of predictive ability of their model in explaining the distribution of the lizard. So we have to accept that. We have to accept that maybe ecological paradigms that were developed and valid 50 years ago need to be revisited. That doesn't mean they're not valid any longer, but that means they need to be complemented. So there's a lot of work here to integrate the human, cultural, and economic dimensions to ecology itself. Another way to look at it is this paper entitled Marine Ecosystem Science on an Intertwined Planet by Osterblom and colleague, that really shows a little bit the same spirit, that you do have your marine system, and then you have this layer of proximate, direct interaction, and that could be different type of pressure from fishing, pollution to ocean acidification. And then those ones are ultimately dictated by a more distal set of interaction, going from geopolitics to finance to technology, human migration. And that you really need to look across that whole spectrum to actually make sense of what's happening in your marine ecosystem. If you just look at your one species and just look at one stressor, you will miss a lot of the picture. And that doesn't mean you need to be able and have the skills to do all of that yourself. But I think it talks and it speaks to the capacity of collaborating increasingly to address the challenges we're facing. And that's spontaneously the first step would be interdisciplinary research, right? I have my own skills, I have my own domain of expertise. How do I collaborate with another scientist that has different skills and can bring a different expertise? That's the idea with interdisciplinary research. An example I really like is this opinion piece published a couple of years ago in Trends in Ecology and Evolution, saying, well, why ecologists should care about financial markets, right? That's not, at the time especially, well, that wasn't a very straightforward, and there was no straightforward answer. And that was making the point that ecologists should care. And then 2 years later came this one, why finance should care about ecology. And it was written by a professor in finance, making the other way around and arguing that finance should actually look more into ecology. And so we actually reached out to that professor in finance, Bert Scholtens, and wrote together an article called Leverage Points in the Financial Sector for Seafood Sustainability that really was bringing a truly interdisciplinary effort with scholars from sustainability, natural sciences, finance, and accounting in trying to tackling the challenges of sustainability within the seafood sector and identifying 3 key leverage points where, if sustainability criteria were taken into consideration, could really transform the way finance incentivizes better practices. Now, beyond interdisciplinary lies transdisciplinary research. And I think this is the most relevant maybe in the context of this introductory webinar about science, policy, society interface, because the idea of transdisciplinary research is to move beyond the bridging of academic disciplines to also engage with society, with stakeholders such as policy, governments, or civil society actors, and to co-produce knowledge. So it's not just a top-down science to stakeholder, but it's really capitalizing on a wide variety of knowledge. It's what Maria Tenge called the multiple evidence-based approach, right? Which tries to synthesize and harness all kind of different knowledge, recognizing that they all have value and they enrich what you can do and how you can solve problems. Albert Nordstrom at the beginning of the year and other people, including Chris, that we will talk after, published also this paper about principles for knowledge co-production in sustainability research, right? How do you go about co-production? Because it can be quite intimidating when you're in your scientific ivory towers to just break the walls and engage with real world. And so they light up a set of principles arguing they need to be context-based. The co-production needs to be context-based. It needs to be pluralistic, of course, recognizing the different knowledge and the different people around the table, goal-orientated and interactive. Which brings me to the fact that if you want to interact, please raise your hands and engage after the presentation. I would be more than happy to discuss with you, and so will Chris. Another example of that is this emergence of a global science business initiative for ocean stewardship, like the Seafood Business for Ocean Stewardship, CBOS initiative that was created 4 years ago when a group of scientists decided to engage with the 10 largest seafood companies in the world. And that's quite unusual because when you think of co-production of knowledge, you often think of traditional knowledge, which is absolutely critical, or small-scale artisanal fishers, for instance. But the big transnational corporations are often seen as the evil, right? It's like this is the industry. Yet the private sector is crucial if we are to shift into a more sustainable world. So in a paper over the summer, again, like we discussed this, like science industry collaboration, is it a sideway or highways to ocean sustainability? And we really ponder the pro and cons, because I think it's promising, but ones need to be aware of the caveats to engage with such powerful and influential actors, of course, but worth exploring. And this is my final slide to conclude and give the floor to Chris, who will talk more about the type of scientist that is needed to conduct that research. And this is a quote from Robert Cates, the father of sustainability, you could say, who argued that sustainability science is a different kind of science that is primarily use-inspired, with significant fundamental and applied knowledge components, and committed to moving such knowledge into societal action. And I think his point is that the real test of success of sustainability science will be in implementing its knowledge to meet the great environment and development challenges of this century. So how do we do that? And how can scientists, whether early career, mid-career, or late career, actually become change makers? Thank you very much.
Hi, Jean-Baptiste. Thank you for your quite engaging presentation. Nice to see it. Chris, if you would like to join us now and start sharing your presentation and your thoughts, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Draško, and hello, everybody. First of all, I just want to thank Katarina and Peter and Andrea and others for inviting me to talk today. It's really nice to be here. It's night time for me and it's getting late, so I'm drinking lots of coffee to keep up with you all. A couple of things I guess you need to know about me. As Peter said, I tend to hide in people's spam boxes. So if you get an email from me, it tends to go straight to your junk. So check there. I guess the important thing you need to know about me is a lot of my research is about how we bridge this science policy interface. So how can I look at how we can help scientists and decision makers of different types work together more effectively for evidence-informed decision making. And ironically, today I'm not going to be talking that much about that. I'm actually going to be talking about a different type of scientist for a different type of science. The last thing I should mention is in Australia, I come from Northern Australia where we talk fast and we don't pronounce things properly. So JB's promised me I talk too fast, he'll let me know. So JB just gave a really good background into the different types of science we need. The scale, the complexity and the interconnectedness of the challenges facing marine ecosystems are significant. And they're going to have a significant impact. They're already having a significant impact on society, on our well-being, on our future, on our prosperity. But the challenge is, if we need to do a different type of science, then we need a different type of scientist. We don't need scientists necessarily anymore who can just work within their single disciplines. We need scientists who can work across disciplines to be able to integrate natural and social sciences, as an example. We need scientists who can work across knowledge systems, who can bridge cultural knowledge with experiential knowledge, for example, the knowledge that a policymaker might have, with local community knowledge, and to connect that with scientific knowledge to give a more holistic picture about what we can know. We also need scientists who can facilitate knowledge exchange, who can work at the interface between marine science and policy, which I guess is what Venice is going to hopefully help us all do a little bit better. And we need scientists that can support evidence-informed policy and practice and help us to actually have a real impact on the world around us. And it goes back to the point Andrea made before, that the accumulation of scientific knowledge is good, but it's not enough. It's how we apply that knowledge to make a difference. And increasingly, all of these things, all of these attributes are actually linked to our career success as scientists now. So it's becoming more, we used to be measured just on our number of publications, but increasingly more and more we're seeing evidence that to be promoted, to get tenure, and to have a long-term academic career, you need to be able to demonstrate these types of abilities and skills. But the challenge is, right, we're not really trained how to do this. So scientific training, for the most part, is still confined to a single discipline, and to the rules and norms of a single discipline. So I originally started life as a coral reef ecologist, and I knew nothing about social science. I didn't know what epistemology was. I didn't know what positionality was. I knew nothing about the field. And this makes it really hard to work. Yeah.
I'm sorry, we received a message in the chat that people cannot hear you very well. So if you can please just get a little bit closer to the microphone.
Yeah, is that better?
I don't know, Marta has to tell us.
Is that better, Marta?
Yes, thanks, she says.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. Yeah, and so it's not easy. And so if we have a look at this figure, for example, different scientists from different disciplines will be looking at the same system. So if we look at the fisheries, a natural scientist, for example, might ask how many species and what biomass comprise the bycatch of a fishery, whereas a social scientist could ask anything from how many fishes adopt seasonal climate forecasts to what's the influence of masculine culture on fishing practices. And so it's really hard to engage across these types of questions if we don't understand another discipline. Another big problem with scientific training doesn't include a focus on the development of what we call soft skills, so things like team building, leadership. And it's also problematic because integrative research can take longer, it can be harder to publish, it's harder to get funded, and it presents us with reputational risk, particularly for early and mid-career stages, and particularly if we're in organisations that don't recognise or reward the different challenges we're facing. At the same time, we're expected to impact across policy and practice, and we need scientists that can. But we use this analogy of a mountain because reaching policy impact is actually really hard. It's like climbing a mountain, and there's multiple pathways up that mountain, and we're not trained in how to do it. We're not taught what is policy or what is an impact or how can science be used in policy. And to do that, it's like requiring an understanding of a whole new ecosystem with actors, networks, institutions, contexts, ideas. And most academic training, PhDs and so forth, don't currently prepare us for this. And so it can be really intimidating for early and mid-career researchers to know where to start. And then I guess the last thing, and this is going to be a bit of a personal story, when we're expected to be a new type of scientist, sometimes it's really hard to know who you are. So as I said, I started as an ecologist, and when I shifted to social science, I told my boss, my ecologist boss, and he literally told me that you've sold your soul to join the dark side. For the next 5 minutes, he continued to tell me that social science has no rigor. It's just someone's opinion. It's not real science. And he told me that I should try and get a real job. I tell you this anecdote because sometimes as we try to work across disciplines, and as JB was talking with different partners like industry or environmental non-government organisations, it can test our integrity and it can make our peers think differently about us. And it's something that we have to know how to manage. But what I want to tell you is that it's hard, but it's worth it. So what we're starting to see more and more is what we call bright spots. So bright spots are outliers that perform better than we would expect. So for science policy, it's evidence or situations where science does inform policy. In Australia, we've seen examples around recovery of albatross from climate change and a strong fisheries sector around southern bluefin tuna. And through these, we're starting to learn how to do things better, and particularly how to bring early and mid-career researchers, how to empower them to do it better as well. So the challenge is, how do we get more of these bright spots and how do we build the capacities to help early and mid-career and all scientists like JB mentioned do this better? I'm going to quickly whip around a few of these, draw on these 2 papers. If you can't access them, I know different people have troubles accessing databases, please just flick me an email or a message on Twitter and I'll send them to you. But really I want to highlight some of the skills we need As a segue, and then when we get to Croatia, sorry, where the first workshop was held, when we get to Venice, we'll go into the detail of how we actually do these things on a practical level. So the first thing to do and be a new type of scientist, we need to have an area of our expertise. We need to know what you bring to a table. So one of the world-leading interdisciplinary researchers told us, I think to be interdisciplinary, you need to be a specialist at something. It could be a discipline, it could be a place, it could be a field of study, or it could be a method. But you need to know what you bring to the table and have your reputation in your field. You need to know how to express your field, your jargon, your technical expertise in ways that other people can understand. And this point's going to come up a lot. You do this by seeking to understand and then be understood, and using things like metaphors and analogies. You need to be open-minded. One of the big ones is around sample size. It's not uncommon for me to publish papers now with a sample size of 15. If I get a very quantitative reviewer, they'll tear me apart and tell me that that's not real science. So we need to be open to understanding the norms and practices of other disciplines to bring them together. And we need to be open-minded to new ways of doing things. We need to be patient. Delivering a new type of science, the type of science JB was talking about, it takes time and it takes patience. And again, particularly for earlier and mid-career researchers, particularly in the current world where jobs are being tested, where we're forced to publish more and have impact less, we really need to try and manage the patience of how long this stuff takes versus the reward systems we operate within. And we need institutional change to enable that. And we need to appreciate it is going to be hard. We need to embrace the complexity. Ambiguity and complexity actually lets us try new things like the CBOS example that JB just spoke about. It helps us be creative. And it lets us actually push our disciplinary knowledge and boundaries in really innovative ways. And again, that finance example that JB gave us really illustrates that. And we need to take the time to work through these complexities and make sure all values and knowledge bases are respected and reflected in the work that we do. We also need to push your boundaries. This stuff makes us feel uncomfortable, and I think that's good. I think nothing easy ever made a real big difference, and the more uncomfortable we feel, we're probably working on something a bit harder and a bit more significant. And again, this is another quote from a world-leading interdisciplinary researcher. I'm completely ignorant of different theory. I think in some ways you've got to be brave and be able to interact in these spaces where you know nothing. So as I said, when we get to Croatia, when we get to Venice, the focus will be on actually developing the practical skills to actually be all of these things, to apply them in our work. The last point I'm going to leave you on, guys, is that we need to accept that mistakes do happen and we need to not give up. Trying to be a new type of scientist, trying to do a new type of science, trying to engage with policy and different stakeholders, trying to influence policy, it's really bloody hard, and you fail. And failure is really important because failure gives us a chance to learn. So what we need to do is be resilient. We need to keep giving it a crack and keep trying. We need to remember why we're doing what we're doing and push through some of those difficulties, because over time you will make a difference. And I can honestly say that across my career, all the really significant, or a lot of the really significant impacts that I've seen have come where early career, mid-career people have been involved. And a big part of this, as I've sort of reiterated a few times, is staying humble and never stop learning. I just want to reiterate this: seek first to understand and then be understood. And obviously attending this webinar and the course and everything else is the first step in that. So as I said, that's a bit of a crash course into some of the things we'll cover in Venice, not Croatia. And I'll leave it there, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Nice one, Venice, Croatia. I was waiting for somebody to say that finally in front of all these Italians participating here.
Finally.
So yeah. So as you may notice, JB and Chris, these younger Twitter generation guys, so they would like to have this session slightly more interactive. I mean, we all wanted it, but we didn't know how to make it. So I would like both of you guys to go through Q&As, and as you requested, you will answer live to all these questions. So I will not read them, but please refer to the person that you are replying to, and then be quick, because we are 15 minutes or more late already. And then once you're done with these questions and answers, we'll see if there are some raised hands. So we might actually involve some of the attendees to actually give you a verbal question. So please, JB, you have been firstly named, so if you can just go through the questions and answer the one directed to you.
I would love to, but they literally just disappeared from the screen. So let me find them back. Or maybe they have been promoted up. Yes, exactly. So I think, I mean, they're all really good questions. I'll start with the one from Giulio, asking about how to ensure the scientific validity of the derived knowledge, right? When you engaged in transdisciplinary approach, meaning in particular with, for instance, industrial actors or the private sector.
Nice one, JB. I'll take ours quickly. Question to Chris. You mentioned the need to learn new languages. One of the major gaps. How do you suggest we break this? By the way, great presentation. Thank you. Yeah, so this is a tough one. So there's the obvious things like by avoiding jargon and our technical types of language. One of the biggest ways is actually by using metaphors and analogies and stories and anecdotes. So talking about our experiences to illustrate a point rather than presenting with data. The biggest thing is we need to get away from linear types of communication where we're giving them a message. We really need to move towards models of what we call knowledge exchange. So two-way engagement where we have a relationship between scientists and policymakers, for example, founded upon trust and mutual respect and shared goals. And we're talking and we're seeking to understand each other to work together. Again, that's really easy for me to say in theory. It's really hard to do in practice, particularly as an early and mid-career scientist. And I don't want Drashko to yell at me for taking too long. So I'll defer back to my point that everyone that comes to Venice will walk away knowing exactly how to do that.
You meant Croatia, right?
Yeah, Hrvatska.
So, guys, would you like me to direct these questions to you, or you can just read through them and see how you're going to answer them?
Yeah, so another one quickly is about a transdisciplinary research guide, and that is such a great idea, whoever said that, and we actually have it in review at the moment. So if the reviewers are on the call and they feel like recommending our paper get accepted, it'll come out soon. But definitely the skills needed to be interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary are quite similar, but there's different things that you need to be able to understand. And so there's definitely work, and JB was just touching on some of the risks and things there. So I'm happy to share some resources around the group that might give some ideas around that as well.
Drashko, there is also one person raising her hand, so maybe you can help her.
I will let Yarnea talk. I just wanted to see if JB and Chris want to go through these questions to go to the end, but Yarnea has been quite active, so maybe Yarnea, if you are ready, we have allowed you to talk. So please join in with your microphone.
Thank you very much for the word, and thanks so much for not only wonderful presentations coming at the end, but the entire thing has been very nice. One of the aspects that I think hasn't been mentioned or not sufficiently is the role of teams and institutional settings in building the kind of science and transdisciplinary approach that you are mentioning, and that most of us, I guess, strive at. So, and I think I'd just like us to acknowledge the culture and the institutional structure that we have in most of the Mediterranean countries, and address this as kind of structural challenges. And maybe when we are in Venice, I'm sure we'll have time to think through the particular features of what we're facing. But I just want us to go beyond the fact that it requires a personal attitude to do this kind of science, and there are much more deeply rooted structural challenges that pertain to hierarchy in institutions, that pertain to much smaller teams than the ones that you have access to in some of the different countries. And I guess just a lot of intangible cultural features that nevertheless impact quite strongly on the type of science we do. I don't really expect you to answer and engage with this, but it's just to put something on the table that I'm sure we will have the chance to address appropriately in Venice.
If I could reply to that, if I could stick my fingers in here in the pie. You're absolutely right, and it's something that one of the reasons why this particular workshop is mid-career. One of the reasons why we selected mid-career, one of the discussions that we had with Chris and with Andrea and with Dania, is that the recognition that actually some of the mid-career researchers now are in a position to have their own groups of people working together. And this was one of the particular important aspects, which is different from the previous workshop, is that actually not to point or focus on one person in particular, but Andrea Bavanti, he's a man of particular influence and a man that I've had numerous conversations with about helping to develop institutions along this way. And I believe that he and some of the people that will attend in Venice are in a position to make this more institutionalized and make it give the opportunities to move away from individual science into transdisciplinary science. Andrea, to you.
No, I think you're quite wrong in attributing to me such kind of influence. I'm doing my best, and I recognize the importance. We discussed a lot about that, the importance of institutional settings, and I really hope that mid-career scientists and practitioners attending the course and beyond the course will allow us all together to build a kind of roadmap and reach some concrete results. I see just a very quick comment on the two excellent, really brilliant presentations from JB and Chris, that if I look to my daily life in the scientific community, even beyond the National Research Council, at least the marine community, the one that I know better, we are, I don't know, thousands of years from this mentality, this approach. So the real question is that the type of science we need, this socio-ecological new type of science, which I really recognize as a key step, is very, very, very far, at least in Italy. So we have to work a lot.
If I may, from my side, add a bit to this. Yeah, very interesting presentations, really nice to hear. They give a bit of fresh air to the impacts that we are putting on our ecosystems and to reflect on ways to move forward. I think we are in a very important moment. Yes, there have been these reports. There is lots of alarm going on, but also I think there is a certain agreement towards the need for action. So I think there is a momentum. This training is a prototype, I think, of things that could be set together in a way to prepare people that would be part of the decision making, the practices at different scales. We would wish, and of course in the preparation and internal discussions, we were keen in checking ways to make this rather a process than a point in time in terms of a course, but of course for the time being the resources are available for that one. But of course it would be really great to think about how to move that into a process and to prepare people that would be part of this future transformation, right? So I think that it's good to see that there's a good appetite for things like that, that people are starting to think. So from the people that have shared already these questions, I think there's lots of appetite towards change, towards thinking out of the box, to see things differently. And it's about engaging. In the Mediterranean, we all understand, I think, the point. It's challenging. We all live in our daily life with these challenges, I think. But of course, with this generation of people that are willing to do the change, with the momentum in terms of doing transformative changes in the upcoming, say, 10 years, I think we are well positioned to be able to add a bit to these processes.
I would like to resume with our presenters, if they have some more answers to give to the participants. But also I would like to remind you that we are now 20 minutes late. So if you are giving answers, do it in 3 sentences, otherwise I'll cut you. And we have to move towards Pete's presentation, which will basically then be more of a discussion type. So there will be again a possibility to interact. But so JB, Chris, are you having some comments, or you are planning to answer or to some of these questions in writing? Please do so now.
Sorry guys, first be aware that there is another person that raised the hand and potentially she can ask a comment. So or ask a question or make a comment, Audrey. So think about it.
So Joshua, maybe I can take a question while you let that person into the room. But it was a question from Barbara, and it's about, just as you say, we need to build relationships between science and policy. What's your take on boundary organisations? Great question. Thanks, Barbara. I'm actually a massive fan of your work, and I'm really glad you're here. And that's why JB is letting me answer this one. Yeah, I think boundary organisations are the way of the future. I think they have a level of independence and credibility that lets us accelerate the speed and the scale at which science can have an influence over policy and practice because of that. And I think far more than the individual, they can have really significant impacts, and we're starting to document them now. In the chat, I've dumped a paper that we wrote a couple of years ago as an example from Sweden. Your questions about ICES and PICES, we're actually spent the last 3 months evaluating ICES. We're hoping to submit it this month, so I'd be happy to share it with you if you want to have a chat about it. But yeah, I think boundary organisations are the way of the future. That's a long 3 sentences. JB, over to you, mate.
Yeah, no, I think you answered it really well. Maybe it was just to bounce back on what Dania had said before, like trying to bring the bright side despite a lot of indicators being pointing towards kind of a negative feeling, and I very much support that. I think, to put it in the words of Carl Folke, the former science director at the Stockholm Resilience Center, he really started talking about a new renaissance over the last few years, and I think that's something quite inspiring because you can see that happening, and you see it in the civil society with movements such as like Friday for the Futures, with really like a youth movement taking and seizing that problem of climate change and biodiversity loss and making it a political and activist thing. And you see increasingly scientists taking on that challenge and trying to engage with society. So I think the bottom line is, never before have we been such aware of the challenges and so much working on finding solutions. And some of the solutions are available, they just need to be implemented. And I mean in terms of global community, because to echo the point from Jerneia earlier. I think, yes, traditional knowledge have known that way before science could even catch up with them. So I think bringing this traditional knowledge into the equation strengthen the spirit and the recognition that things needs to be done. But there is a momentum, there is a movement. It's not just a moment.
I would like to bring in Audrey. Audrey, please unmute yourself and just comment on your question, actually a comment, because I think it fits.
Hello, hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes, it was just a comment. I wanted to inform you about the start of a cost action that I'm going to chair for the next 4 years. And I've put a comment on the question and answers, and it will be on marine functional connectivity, and also how to improve gathering information about that for the management of the seas. And I think our goals are quite similar to everything that was presented today. And I thank all the person that talked, because it was very, very nice talks and very useful for me. And this cost action is going to gather 27 countries in Europe, and also the US, Australia, Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. And so if you want to participate, I've put the link in the question and answer bit. And so feel free to get information about it and join us if you want to. And it could be a good way to coordinate this effort at the international scale in the coming years, because the goal of this workshop, well, the webinar today, is quite similar to some of the things that we have in mind. So it's just starting, so feel free to join. The more we are, the better it will be. Thanks.
Thanks, Audrey. So as we are now 25 minutes late, I would like to invite Pete to start his video and to take over the chat. So Pete, the floor is yours, and I will be as helpful in letting the people join in as I can.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm not sure where we want to go from here, because obviously in the previous half an hour we've had this general discussion, and I think in many ways, if there's any other comments that refer to this ongoing discussion, then we can continue it. I mean, otherwise, I'm just aware of the timing, and a lot of people may have to move on to other things. So if there are any particular, I'm looking in the Q&A as I speak.
Pete, let's do it the faster way. So if there are people who would like to say something, instead of typing the Q&A, they can raise the hand, and I will let them in to speak. So please continue.
Absolutely. That's I think the best way to deal with this. Bearing in mind this discussion about transdisciplinary graduate course. Chris was saying something earlier that he was submitting some work. Is that correct, Chris? Just a nod will good. I'm looking at your picture. Nod. Could you give us a little 2-minute introduction to that?
Yep. Can you just maybe, Pete, remind me exactly which work you're referring to? Was that the stuff I was mentioning to Barbara, or something in my talk?
Are you referring to a paper that you've just submitted about transdisciplinary graduates course?
So what we're trying to do is all the barriers that I spoke about in my talk, what we're trying to come up to is kind of like a guide for the types of things we need to be asking ourselves and asking our collaborators when we're starting to engage with a different discipline, a different field, a different type of knowledge. So it's almost a how-to guide to engage in these type of activities. So the figure I showed you of the reach to reap and the way different scientists ask different questions about the same thing, it's basically an intro to how we can ask each other those things and how we understand different fields and sectors to find space to integrate our different worldviews and beliefs to come up with a shared question. I think a big problem with when we engage in these processes is the question's predetermined. And so what we're really trying to do is make sure everyone's values and knowledge bases and opinions and worldviews and beliefs are captured right at the start of a participatory process. So that's kind of what I was referring to there. Pete, thank you.
The main reason I ask this is because there is an international MSP course being run in Venice, at the University in Venice, with 2 other cooperative universities that is fully funded. And it would be an excellent opportunity to try and bring some of those transdisciplinary concepts into that MSP course. Unfortunately, Eleanor, who would be joining us in Venice, and I'm not sure whether Eleanor will join us because, as I understand, she's taken another position recently. But that would be something that we could also look at integrating into the course from my perspective. Maybe somebody else, if anybody else has a comment.
Peter, sorry, Darsko. I see Elena is attending this webinar, so maybe she can just jump in and update us, everybody. I don't know. Elena, I see. Okay, here you are.
Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm Elena Gissi from the University of Venice. I will be at the course. I was awarded just before the pandemic of Marie Skłodowska-Curie action with Stanford University with a transdisciplinary project. So I'm happy to bring my experience. I have coordinated for 5 years the Erasmus Mundus Master course on Maritime Spatial Planning. And we structured the course for students with different backgrounds working together on MSP. And I'm very happy and I'm very proud that today these students, our former students, are actually the...
I think we lost you, Elena, the sound.
Can you hear me now? So now, just today, I've seen the news from UNESCO IOC experts and facilitators for MSP in this small state island. And yes, hello, good morning. And I'm very proud to say that there are a lot of our former students. So I'm very happy that they took that position. So I can bring this experience and bring the experience of this 5 years long journey. Actually, the master course just stopped. So it is a pity because as I said, this kind of, as Chris and the others mentioned, these efforts need funding, and it is not easy to get funding for transdisciplinary projects. So, and to support this kind of education, but I'm very willing to share the experience. Actually, Alejandro Iglesias Campos was part of the consortium who supported the master course and the UNESCO IOC. Our students were internship with there, and Andrea Barbanti and the CNR were also involved. So we will enjoy and play a lot. I will be at the course in Venice because I'm afraid that I will not move to US before March next year. I'm afraid, but I'm also happy to be with you in Venice. So thanks.
Thanks, Elena. Pete, Audrey would like to add something to the discussion. So if you allow, please, Audrey.
Yes, it was just to mention that in the frame of, we have a working group in the IOC-UNESCO project. So the project I was mentioning, which aims at producing relevant data in terms of connectivity for management and policy making. And in the frame of this working group, we have planned within the next 6 months to organize or contribute to fund workshops consisting in transfer of knowledge on marine policy management objective, knowledge requirement for effective decision making, open to different scientists in Europe. And I was thinking like maybe if you want to expand the thing that happens currently in Venice, maybe we can contribute to that because we might have some money for that and it might increase the impact and start something at the European scale at least. So just to mention that, I don't know if you guys will be interested or not, but it could be an option.
I'm always open to the offering of funds, but from a less facetious manner. I think that the answer to all of these issues is creating a strong network, and I believe that anybody that wants to come and join us at the table, they're more than welcome. I think that I hope that applies to all of the organisers as well.
Pete, it is your session, so Unless you are done, please continue with moderation. Don't jump on me.
No, I think working on the basis that we do have limited time. Don't have anything in particular I want to raise. I think everything was covered according to my notes that I
just
had.
wanted to draw your attention, as this is the story about the future course also. There's
Absolutely.
A question from Mr. Ottman, who is asking if he might be able to join, because he says he didn't register and he didn't apply. So maybe you can comment on the potential process if there is more like a housekeeping thing.
Yeah, I was just going to come to the logistics side of things. So thank you, particularly Katerina, who has been the one that has been coordinating this side of the Marine Institute work, and everybody that's assisted with the selection of the attendees. While we have our 30 plus attendees selected, we are aware that in March in Venice, we hope that everything will be clear and everybody will be free to travel. But we are aware that there could potentially be issues. So I would just ask all of those people who are on this call, who have received, a provisional acceptance, or who are on the waiting list, that they be a little bit patient. And anybody that has got this selection, has been selected, that may not be able to attend, to inform us as soon as they can. Of course, it would be, we would expect that there will be complications for some people to get in and out of the country depending on the COVID situation. So whatever we can assist with, we will assist with. But if at some point you turn around and decide that this is not going to be your option to come, the sooner you allow us to engage with people on the waiting list, the more likely we are to fill the course. And of course, we will also have the option of live streaming. So the live streaming, I'm not sure what situation we currently have, but our aim is that most of the sessions will be available live streaming. I'm not sure that many people will want to spend 4 days watching us chat in Venice, but who knows? Some people have more exciting lives than that. But basically, we would like to keep this open as much as possible to anybody that's interested in the topic. And it wouldn't be, I don't think it would be revealing to say that we hope that this will be the first of many workshops. And I hope to see Chris when he's in his 40s actually doing the same job.
4 years away.
So, and maybe JB in his 40s then. So I think I'm done. I think if anybody has any questions regarding joining the course, while we have closed the applications, an informal email to Katerina and to the other organisers will be replied to and accepted. We can't promise that there will be places available. That will be dependent. But the more this information goes around, I'm sure that there will be other workshops. Maybe not in 2021, but later down the line. So at that point, I would like to hand over to Dania, Andrea, and Alejandro, whoever would like to just close the meeting. If there's no questions, first of all, is there any questions? JB?
Yeah, wait a second. There is a question actually on the Q and answers chat, which is related to the course, and I think it's worth discussing it. It's from Barbara. She's asking if you are going to prepare some material before the course. So I guess we will be. At the moment, we are still dealing with more administrative staff, especially for those participants which are from countries that need visas. So I would like to reassure those participants that very soon they will receive an official letter with all the appropriate statements that are needed to start their visa process. You have to be patient, and actually I want to thank you for your patience so far and flexibility. The situation is not so easy to handle because, yeah, COVID and everything, plus summer, and most of us are working in the marine environment, so summer is actually not necessarily holiday. So that's the point. But Barbara, I believe, but I'll defer to the main speakers, the main teachers of the course, that yes, we will try to prepare something and distribute reference documents or papers or material beforehand, probably not now, but later in the year or the beginning of next year, we should be start being more practical in that regard. So now, sorry, Dania and Andrea and Alejandro, the floor is yours.
Sorry, JB wanted to mention something. Sorry, Dania. Can you... No,
it was just to mention that JB, do you want to say something? Sorry, no? Okay. Just to follow on the question to the next steps. As Katerina well mentioned, I mean, we are a little bit cautious due to the situation of the COVID itself. We are aware of the process for the visas. So the internal discussion went into finding out after the autumn how the situation will be in order to start the process, and hopefully knowing that the physical presence of everyone is ensured. So I guess that around end of November, beginning of December will be the moment where we could be informing about more clearer steps for us and for everyone to understand how the situation will be. This is one, so that's a conditioner. For us, in terms of documentation and information to handle beforehand, this introductory webinar was already attempted to be an introductory course and to prepare some material. So we have already the presentations, they will be shared with everyone. And we plan to have a short brief or report out of this sessions, this webinar, that I think the best thing would be for it to be also informing about what to expect in the course. So all of this would be expected to be, as Katerina mentioned, towards, before the end of the year, I guess. We will be giving you a sign with the knowledge on the COVID and with the preparation towards more material and content for the course itself. It has been for me a pleasure to see the enthusiasm again, to get to know some of you, and we hope to really have the chance to meet in March 2021, fingers crossed, in Venice.
Andrea and Alejandro, if you have some final words.
Yeah, a few words from my side. I think that almost everything has been said. Just to say again that I'm really happy about this initiative we had, and I'm very excited to have you all in Venice and to continue this discussion that is actually culturally extremely rich, and it's fun. It's really fun for me. I hope it will be also concrete results. I agree. I am optimistic. I want to be optimistic. There are several moves ongoing, maybe also due to COVID. Who knows if this is going to become an opportunity. And we have some, say, initiatives that are directly linked, let's say, to the organizers or people more involved in the organization. I'm referring to BlueMed. I'm referring to the MBPC community, InterregMed. I'm referring to UNESCO initiatives, UN Decade, and all the rest. So there is a good momentum, and possibly we can contribute for some concrete results step by step. I'm very pragmatic usually. For sure, this is a start of something. I think, as Peter already said, that we will do all we can to have other opportunities, other workshops, structured initiatives. Let's see how we can progress, and are very happy that there is this appetite, this request for such kind of initiatives. Thank you all for attending the webinar, and thank you for attending the course in March.
Well, on my side and on behalf of IOC, thank you all as well for the webinar today. And it is actually a pleasure for IOC to embark in this adventure with ISMAR, with the Universidad de Málaga, the ETC of the University of Málaga, the Maritime Institute, and the CPMA, in order to continue working together. As Andrea said, it could be a great opportunity to see how we can develop all these activities beyond the course in March. As intergovernmental organization, our main interest is to increase the collaboration amongst our member states. And when we talk about member states, we talk about the public institutions, we talk about the officials of the governments, we talk about scientists, and ideally to strengthen all institutional capacities to make possible your science and to translate it into direct actions for policy implementation, attending all the principles and objectives of our decade and Agenda 2030 on sustainable development. Then it is my pleasure to share this message with you, and see you in the Venezia next year.
Thank you. I don't know if I will capture all the final words that needs to be said, but I think that we all share really a great appreciation for your comments, because the attendees have been sending really nice comments. We all have been worried if this entire thing will work, because we kind of closed it a little bit to enable us to organize it properly and keep the timing. But during the course, we tried to open it up, and I guess you all appreciated that based on your comments. So thank you for that. We tried our best. Next time will be better. Thanks to all the great presentations. It has been really kind of nice to see it going, and I think it did capture the attention of the entire audience. Thanks for the discussions we had. So it was a pleasure to see you all online. Give us a little bit of time so we can come up with a potential edit of this entire video, because it's been saved and it's been broadcasted on Facebook of the MBPC. We might make a little bit shorter versions for those who would like to revisit some of the talks. Also to be able to send you the documents. I would just really kindly ask you all to go and fill the online questionnaire, which should be presented to you now when we close this video stream. But also I think you will be getting the link to the questionnaire in the email. And yeah, I was the one who pressed broadcast, so in the end I will be the one who will press the end. But if any of you, the great people, the lecturers, would like actually to close this so that your face is the last one instead of mine, please feel free to add the final comment, or we can just close it. Nobody. So Katarina says the bell is here. Thank you all, and see you in Croatia, Venice. Sorry, Italy.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. See you in Venice. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.